8 centuries ago, a mystic in Mecca wrote a map, not of streets, a map of consciousness. Today you call it Kundalini, chakra activation, energy awakening. And the internet makes it sound like a brand new discovery. It isn't. Because long before modern labels, this inner ascent was described in another language: the self, the heart, the breath, the secret, the hidden, and what happens when veils dissolve. The writer was Ibn Arabi, one of the deepest metaphysical minds of the medieval world. His work isn't religion as argument, it's awakening as architecture, written in paradox, symbol, and precision. So this is not a claim that two traditions are identical. It's a listening experiment. Two vocabularies pointing at one pattern. What yogic language calls rising energy, Ibn Arabi describes as a shift in governance. The impulsive self becomes disciplined. The heart becomes a mirror. The veils become thin. And reality stops feeling separate. You don't need to believe anything. You only need to listen and notice what recognizes itself. Do not chase sensation. Hold discipline with gentleness. Return to the heart. The first station is not mystical. It is primal. In the chakra map, survival. In Ibn Arabi's map, the nafs, raw selfhood. Here is the first law. Awakening does not begin with light. Awakening begins with the refusal to be commanded. Because the nafs, in its earliest form, commands. It doesn't suggest, it orders. Now, more, prove it, secure it, win. In Ibn Arabi's worldview, this is more than psychology. It is metaphysics. Because the nafs is a veil over perception. If it rules your impulses, it will rule your world. It will turn reality into threat. It will turn people into enemies. It will turn your own body into a battlefield. So the first rise is not in the spine. It is in governance. When the impulse says now, you learn to say not now. That single pause, that single delay is a doorway. Feel the weight of your body, not as a problem, as a foundation. Feel gravity. Feel the simple fact of being held. No technique, just recognition. Ibn Arabi would say, the root is not your enemy. The root is the ground where the real chooses to appear. Not above matter, through matter. Because the deepest trap is spiritual arrogance, trying to leap over the animal self as if purity is elsewhere. But awakening begins by seeing the animal self clearly, without shame and without obedience. Refrain. Do not chase sensation. Hold discipline with gentleness. Return to the heart. Amara is the root's shadow. It wants immediate relief. So it will chase energy the same way it chases sugar, for the hit. This is why people confuse intensity with awakening. Ibn Arabi's measure is different. Not what you feel, but what you become. If an inner awakening makes you harsher, it is not awakening. It is a veil-wearing costume. If it makes you proud, it is a veil-wearing perfume. If it makes you more truthful, more gentle, more careful with speech, then something real has begun. Station 1 closes with a simple vow. I will not obey the first impulse. I will not crown urgency as truth. I will govern. If awakening is real, it does not begin with light. It begins with the first refusal. Ibn Arabi's language is ruthless about this. The self does not only desire, it commands. It wants immediate relief, immediate certainty, immediate control. And because it is loud, people confuse it with truth. But a loud impulse is not truth. It is pressure. So here is the first key that makes the path safe. Delay. Delay is the blade that cuts the commanding self without violence. When you delay, you create a gap, and in the gap, a different intelligence appears, not the impulse, but the witness of the impulse. That witness is the first sign of ascent. Most people try to rise while still obeying every command. That produces confusion, because the same self that wants pleasure will also want mystical pleasure, visions, rushes, intensity, and it will call intensity spiritual. So the first station is an oath. I will not crown urgency as truth. Notice how the commanding self speaks. Now, more, show me proof, make it happen, fix it immediately. Now answer it with a calm sentence. Not now. Not because you are weak, because you are sovereign. The most important thing to understand about the root, it is not an enemy. It is the ground. If you hate the ground, you build nothing. If you respect the ground, you can build anything. So the first work is not to escape the animal nature. The first work is to govern it with mercy. This is why the root must be steady, because the higher stations amplify what you bring to them. If you bring fear upward, it becomes paranoia. If you bring hunger upward, it becomes obsession. If you bring pride upward, it becomes delusion. So begin with stability. If you want one practice that is not meditation, do this. When an impulse rises, name it once, just once. Hunger, anger, control, proof. Then delay, then return. That is awakening in its first form. In the chakra map, the heart is the bridge between lower and higher. In Ibn Arabi's map, the heart is the bridge between worlds. He speaks of the heart as a mirror, not metaphor as decoration, mirror as mechanism. A mirror doesn't create light. A mirror reveals what stands before it. So the heart doesn't manufacture truth. It reveals truth when it is clear. This is why the heart is called heart. It turns. It turns toward joy and away from pain. It turns toward meaning and then forgets and turns away. It turns toward the real and then returns to distraction. Ibn Arabi doesn't call this failure. He calls it nature. A living heart turns. But here is the danger. If you treat the heart like a courtroom, it becomes heavy. If you treat the heart like a trophy, it becomes proud. The heart becomes clear only by one thing: polishing. Polishing is not pressure. Polishing is not performance. Polishing is sincerity. It is the quiet removal of otherness, the inner noise that you worship as identity. In chakra language, the heart opens when love becomes unconditional. In Ibn Arabi's language, The heart opens when it stops clinging to the other, when it stops needing to win, when it stops needing to be right, when it stops needing to prove. And then something strange happens. You begin to feel that life is less personal, not colder, wider. Grief is still grief, but it is no longer a prison. It becomes a teacher. Joy is still joy, but it is no longer a drug. It becomes gratitude. Do not chase sensation. Hold discipline with gentleness. Return to the heart. Here is a clean test. Does your path make you more merciful when nobody is watching? If yes, your heart is polishing. If no, you are collecting experiences, not awakening. Station 2 closes with a simple act. Let one resentment loosen, not as forgiveness performance, as freedom. Let one inner argument end. Ibn Arabi speaks about the heart like a living mirror, and a mirror has a strange rule. It reflects whatever stands before it. So if resentment stands before it, resentment fills the world. If fear stands before it, fear becomes reality. If softness stands before it, reality becomes softer. This is why the heart is the bridge, not because it is nice, because it changes the entire appearance of existence. The heart turns. It turns away. It turns back. It forgets. It remembers. In Ibn Arabi's tone, this turning is not failure. It is life. What matters is what you feed the heart with. Because the heart is easily clouded by otherness, the compulsive focus on what is not real, status, comparison, performance, winning, proving. So the heart is polished by one thing, sincerity. Sincerity is not a mood, it is the removal of performance. When you stop performing spirituality, the heart gets clearer. When you stop performing pain, the heart gets lighter. When you stop performing control, the heart becomes spacious. Here is a rule you can test. If your path makes your relationships cleaner, your heart is opening. If your path makes you harsher in relationships, your heart is closing. The heart station is where the journey stops being a fight and becomes a recognition. You don't need dramatic experiences. You need a cleaner mirror. So choose one thing to soften, one argument you stop replaying, one resentment you stop sharpening, one sentence you stop using to punish yourself. Not because you are forcing positivity, because you are protecting the mirror. And when the mirror is protected, the higher stations become safe. The heart is the gate where power is converted into mercy. Without that conversion, power becomes violence. So let this station do its work, not excitement, but mercy. In chakra language, the throat is truth, voice, vibration. In Ibn Arabi's language, this station is the breath, the spirit that moves through you, the word that creates. He speaks of creation as breathing, not a mechanical event, a living disclosure. Reality is breathed into form. So your voice is not only communication, your voice is an act of creation. Every word you repeat becomes a room you live inside. If you say, "I am doomed," you live in a doomed room. If you say, "I am unlovable," you sleep in that cold house. If you say, I am becoming true. You build a door. This is why this station demands purity, not moral theater, but clarity. The throat is where the invisible becomes audible. It is where the unseen becomes vibration. Ibn Arabi would say, your greatest spiritual practice might be your speech. Not spiritual quotes, not aesthetic words. Truth. If you lie to yourself, you poison the breath. If you speak harshly, you cloud the mirror. If you speak with restraint, you become a clean instrument. Do not chase sensation. Hold discipline with gentleness. Return to the heart. Before you speak, pause once. Let the breath arrive first. Then speak. That pause is spirit. That pause is governance. Station 3 closes with one vow. I will stop cursing myself with my own voice. I will stop making my mouth a weapon. I will let truth be simple. In Ibn Arabi's world, breath is not just oxygen. Breath is disclosure. Reality is breathed into form. Meaning arrives as vibration, and your voice becomes part of that architecture. This station is dangerous because it feels simple. People think awakening is about energy, but Ibn Arabi would ask, what are you creating with your words? Because every repeated word becomes a room. If you keep saying, I'm late, I'm behind, I'm doomed, you live inside a cramped room. If you keep saying, no one understands me, you create isolation. If you keep saying, I must prove myself, you create exhaustion. So the throat station is a purification of speech, not religious speech, true speech. And true speech begins with the courage to stop exaggerating your story. This is a deep discipline, to speak accurately. Not, my life is ruined, but I'm afraid. Not, I'm worthless, but I'm tired. Not, everything is against me, but I feel pressure. Accuracy is spiritual cleanliness. And there is another layer, silence. Some of the most creative speech is silence, because silence stops you from poisoning your own breath. So if you want to activate this station, don't add more words. Remove the words that hurt you. Remove the insults you throw at yourself in secret. Remove the sharpness you carry as identity. Then the breath becomes clean, and the higher perception becomes less distorted. This is how awakening becomes safe, by truth in speech. This is where curiosity becomes dangerous. People come here hunting powers, visions, astral travel, psychic proof. But Ibn Arabi's warning is sharp. The imaginal realm is powerful, and power without discipline intoxicates. He teaches that meanings wear forms. Dreams prove it. Symbols prove it. Inner scenes prove it. An image can be real in its level without being ultimate reality. So the skill is interpretation, not worship. If you chase images, you become a tourist. If you interpret images, you become a knower. This is why the secret is not a party trick. The secret is the witnessing that remains sober. In chakra language, the third eye opens. In Ibn Arabi's language, the veil thins, and perception becomes less personal. You stop taking the movie as the truth. You start seeing the projector. And here is the subtle twist. You are not the ultimate witness. You are the place where witnessing occurs. So if a vision arrives, do not build identity from it. If a dream intensifies, do not worship it. If an inner scene frightens you, do not become its prisoner. Take meaning, leave theater, return. Do not chase sensation. Hold discipline with gentleness. Return to the heart. Station 4 closes with one clean sentence. I will not confuse images with truth. I will use images as doors. Then I will walk through. This is where people get lost. Because the moment perception becomes subtle, the ego tries to turn it into a circus. Images appear, dreams become vivid, symbols arrive with force, and the ego says, I'm special. Ibn Arabi's method is the opposite. Interpret, don't worship. Meaning wears form. Form is not the end. This is the only safe rule for the imaginal realm. Take meaning, leave theater. If an inner scene frightens you, do not build a prison from it. If an inner scene flatters you, do not build a throne from it. If an inner scene excites you, do not build an identity from it. Why? Because the imaginal world can be true in its level without being ultimate truth. So the secret is not the ability to see. The secret is sobriety while seeing. The witness must remain clean. Otherwise, the witness becomes a storyteller, and the storyteller becomes delusion. So the higher the vision, the stronger the discipline must be. This station is not psychic proof. This station is perception without ego. And that is why the best sign of a true opening is you become quieter. Not because you are hiding, because you do not need to announce. You stop hunting evidence. You stop bargaining with reality. You start recognizing. And recognition is silent. That is the secret. Here, words begin to fail, because the crown station is not more information. It is less separation. In chakra language, union. In Ibn Arabi's language, the hidden becomes intimate. Not because you traveled far, because the veil was never on the side of the real. The veil was in the one who looked. So as the veil thins, you don't reach God. You stop insisting you are outside. This is why the crown cannot be forced. Forcing is a symptom of the ego, and the crown opens when the ego stops grabbing. You may feel nothing dramatic here. That is not failure. It may be safety, because the deepest openings often arrive as quiet. Do not chase sensation. Hold discipline with gentleness. Return to the heart. Station 5 closes with a simple surrender. I will stop demanding proof. I will stop bargaining with the unseen. I will let reality be real. In many Kundalini teachings, beyond the crown is a source point, the drop before the ocean, the origin of the lotus. Ibn Arabi's language here is ruthless and tender. The most hidden is not a place you visit. It is what remains when the illusion of separateness dissolves. This is where the word awakening becomes literal, because the self you thought you were begins to look like a costume, not in a depressing way, in a freeing way. This is the station of fana, not annihilation as death, but annihilation of illusion. The illusion that you are isolated, the illusion that you are abandoned, the illusion that you are cut off from the source. And here is the paradox Ibn Arabi loves. You don't lose reality here. You lose your mistake about reality. Do not chase sensation. Hold discipline with gentleness. Return to the heart. Station 6 closes with a line you can barely speak. I am not what I thought I was, and what is real in me has always been here. In many Kundalini systems, the final mark is not just rising, it is integration. The energy descends again, transforming every station. The root becomes sacred ground, the heart becomes stable, the voice becomes true, perception becomes sober, the crown becomes quiet, the beyond becomes ordinary. Ibn Arabi's name for this is wholeness, not perfection theater, wholeness. The complete human is a mirror that reflects reality without claiming it. Mercy without weakness, strength without cruelty, knowledge without arrogance. This is the proof Ibn Arabi respects, not visions, not stories, not specialness. Character. If your path makes you kinder, it is real. If it makes you proud, it is a veil. If it makes you obsessed, it is a trap. Do not chase sensation. Hold discipline with gentleness. Return to the heart. Modern language calls it Kundalini awakening. Ibn Arabi describes the same inner ascent through another map: discipline of the self, polishing of the heart, clarifying of perception, and integration into wholeness. 2 vocabularies, 1 pattern.